of progress.
I'm Liz Neisloss. Tonight on Greater Boston, GBH political guru Adam Reilly joins me to break down Boston Mayor Michelle Wu's State of the City address. Then we'll hear from two housing experts on the mayor's plans to tackle the city's affordability crisis. And finally, the man behind GBH's Curiosity Desk on the most curious events coming up in 2024.
The state of our city is strong.
Mayor Michelle Wu gave her second annual State of the City address on Tuesday, and of course, it's the time to tally up the wins and not the losses, but the challenges facing Boston and what she'll tackle. GBH News reporter and Talking Politics host Adam Reilly joins me to go over it all. It does sound a little bit like a pep rally, Adam, but, you know, maybe that's the way it goes every year.
There was a bit of a triumphal tone, and I think there usually is, not just emphasizing the positive, but casting Boston as a place where unique things are possible. We hear that sometimes from people who are running at the state level, talking about how Massachusetts has a special ability to do remarkable things that will inspire the rest of the country or the world. And we heard something a little bit similar from Michelle Wu last night, talking about how Boston was a city that was capable of innovating and reforming and leading in a way that showed possibility at a time when a lot of people feel like possibility is being constrained.
Yeah, and she does have a way of selling that message. You know, she manages to drive in the emotion. You know, it's a skill.
It is, no questions. One reason she's mayor.
Yeah, sure. So she did have a few issues that seemed maybe like she glossed over. A major thorn for Mayor Wu, Mass and Cass, for example. Let's listen to what she had to say about that.
Our teams built relationships at Mass and Cass and added more beds and services citywide. With unprecedented coordination, we delivered unprecedented results. Today, the encampments are gone and hundreds of people are housed and on the path to recovery.
Sounds like a great picture there. Then, Adam, what's missing?
Well, what struck me about that is it wasn't just that she put a really positive spin on the situation in Mass and Cass, which has been problematic going back multiple administrations, but she made it the lead item when she ticked off her list of accomplishments. That was the first thing she chose to talk about. I think there is agreement among people who work in that space, among people who cover it, like our reporter, Tori Bedford, that the mayor has approached the problem differently than some of her predecessors have, and that some genuine gains have been made. What surprised me is she didn't quite say mission accomplished there. She talked about how there was progress still to come. The hype video before her speech highlighted the push to open a new recovery campus on Long Island in Boston Harbor. There used to be one there, but then it had to stop functioning when the Long Island Bridge was closed down, as a lot of our viewers will know. She really said essentially things are on the right track and are going to continue going on the right track. We've seen the encampments there cleared before and people come back and some real palpable human misery on display. So that was the sort of clip where if things were to get bad in May or June of this year, I have no doubt that you'll see people reaching back, looking for the positive gloss that the mayor offered in her State of the City and contrasting it with the reality. But we'll see, maybe that won't happen. Maybe she has in fact cracked the code.
It is a huge problem, so it would be surprising if it didn't come winging back in some way. Yeah. So another item that she dropped in the speech, which to some people might seem like a small thing, and this is announcing free access to museums. Let's hear what she had to say.
Starting in February, on the first and second Sundays of each month, BPS students and their families will get free admission at the Museum of Fine Arts, the Institute of Contemporary Art, the Museum of Science, the Boston Children's Museum, the New England Aquarium, and the Franklin Park Zoo.
Some people would say, oh, that's a very nice thing, but, you know, just a small thing. Adam, what's your take on it?
She brought that up in the context of a bigger discussion about the state of public K-12 education in Boston, in which she acknowledged that there has been dysfunction in the system for decades. She, of course, argued that it's on the right track under her and Mary Skipper's leadership, and that good things are happening, more pre-kindergarten seats, new enrichment opportunities, vocational and academic for high schoolers. Those are just a couple examples. But what struck me about this museum announcement is it's a really tangible way to say, here is something new, a new expanded opportunity that didn't exist before. And it's a way to bridge two worlds that I think are frequently thought of as separate, the world of middle class and lower middle class Bostonians of limited means. And on the other hand, this world of elite cultural institutions that help to define the city. So I actually think it's the sort of thing where if you're a BPS student, a BPS parent, it's a great deal. And it also has tremendous symbolic value. I should mention that we've already seen a little bit of pushback. Erin Murphy, the at-large city councilor, who's one of the people sometimes suggested as a possible mayoral opponent for Mayor Wu, she and Ed Flynn, who just stepped down as Boston City Council president, he's a district city councilor representing South Boston, they released a letter saying essentially, hey, what about all the kids who are going to private school, whatever that private school may be, suggesting that this is unfair. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I thought there was real symbolic value, again, when it comes to bridging two different worlds in this initiative that the mayor announced.
Which is a theme that resounds in a lot of different areas, including housing. What about what she left out? And one of those things seemed to be, for me, she didn't mention rent control, which doesn't seem like it has a positive future in the State House. What else did she leave out?
Yeah, when you learn that, and it seemed for a long time like rent control had dicey prospects at best on Beacon Hill. If you get the impression that there's no future, there's sort of no reason to bring it up again.
Yeah.
She didn't mention what I think is going to be one of the most interesting stories to follow over the course of 2024 in Boston City Hall, which is she played a big role in electing a huge part of the council. She fundraised for, I believe, 4 incumbents who were seeking re-election. She endorsed another incumbent who was seeking re-election and endorsed 3 newcomers to the council. So a lot of the people who are going to be acting potentially as a check or balance on her ideas and her proposals are people who have their jobs thanks in part to her. So how that's going to play out is really interesting. Ruth C. Louis-Jean, the new city council president, who the mayor fundraised for, has said, hey, we're accountable to the voters. No one wants us to be a rubber stamp for the mayor, and we will not be. And I would guess that they won't be.
Right.
But I think that is something for anyone interested in city politics to keep an eye on as the year unfolds.
All right, super fast in 15 seconds or so. She goes through a lot of what I call mayoral math. She loves to rattle off how many potholes she filled and how many speed bumps she put in. What's the idea with that?
She does. Well, what I see there is a reminder that she got her start interning for former Mayor Tom Menino, who ran Boston for 2 decades. He was not one for lofty rhetoric, but he was known for a passion for the mechanics of government, the nuts and bolts. So when I heard her say we filled 7,000 potholes and put down 300 speed humps and opened 8 parks and playgrounds, what I heard was Menino's influence echoing down through the years. Of course, Menino is the late Tom Menino. He is not here to watch his protege as she governs the city, but I felt like we saw and felt his influence in those comments.
All right, well, that's why we come to you, Adam Reilly, for the political wisdom. Thank you so much. I hope we'll be back with you soon.
Thank you, Liz. Good to talk to you.
Now, as Adam just touched on, Mayor Michelle Wu focused much of her annual State of the City address on one of Boston's biggest challenges:
housing prices that are squeezing families out.
To dig deeper into the mayor's plans to tackle the city's housing crisis, I'm joined by Chrystal Kornegay, CEO of MassHousing, and Felix Zemel, a lecturer at Boston University and a housing expert. Chrystal, let's start with you. What was the headline for you on housing?
The headline on housing is as much about all the things that they've done as it is about trying to continue to chip away at the problem.
And it's a big problem. And Felix, for you?
I agree with what Chrystal said. It's what they've done, and it's that they recognize that there's more that needs to be done and are starting to look at the path forward.
Okay, well, one thing I personally have been able to look at is public housing. We have walked through a lot of buildings. We've talked to a lot of people about the state of disrepair and elevator issues. Here's what Mayor Wu had to say about public housing in Boston.
I'm excited to announce that this year we will identify locations for nearly 3,000 new public housing units to build over the next decade, and the federal government will provide more than $100 million a year to maintain them.
And that maintenance is obviously a big piece of this. What did you hear there, Chrystal?
There are programs that exist already, and what I heard is that the city of Boston is gonna turbocharge their participation in those programs.
And Felix, your input?
I agree. And given the start of my career within the Housing Authority, I see the need very much so.
Yeah, I mean, the issue, the needs are so deep, the repair needs are so deep. Does that sound like enough at this point to your ear, Felix?
So it's not enough at this point. This is not a new concept. This is a continuation of policy that have been ongoing for many, 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 many years. From pretty much the Clinton administration forward, the Boston Housing Authority has been investing in new ideas, experimental programs, ways to provide more affordable public housing, and different means to do that in a way that learns lessons from the past.
Yeah, and so, Chrystal, maybe you can shed a little light on this. There's been a lot said about the reinvention of public housing and perhaps creative hybrid solutions. What is Mayor Wu talking about exactly when she talks about building more public housing?
You hit that right on the head there, Liz. When we think about the housing challenge in the Commonwealth and in the city of Boston, the challenge that's different, that has changed over the decades, is that there are more people who are impacted by it and not just public housing residents. And so the kind of initial vision of public housing on the federal level was about it being mixed income and people moving, using the phrase up and out. And Boston, as Felix alluded to, has been a national leader in thinking about ways in which it can invest in its public housing to not just maintain what it is, but to continue to upgrade it and add to it. That's not just public housing units, but also other units for other incomes, so that we can have a more diverse, economically diverse communities.
And another idea she hit on as a big part of her housing element in her speech was a small idea, the additional dwelling units, literally small idea, that really maybe has big impact. Felix, what do you think of that?
Well, so just to go back to the last question really quickly before I go to this, it also builds on, I apologize, the light just shut off. It also builds on another policy that Mayor Wu presented in recent months as part of our inclusionary zoning program, that a certain portion of development have to also earmark a certain percentage of units for Section 8 housing as well, okay, which goes towards exactly what Chrystal was talking about. The ADUs is really part of a national drive. And as you may know, Governor Healy has made it a priority to allow ADUs as of right across the Commonwealth.
So for people who don't necessarily know this concept, Chrystal, you want to dive in and just briefly explain where would these be put and what are we talking about when we say ADUs? Because people love saying
ADUs. An ADU is it stands for additional dwelling unit, and really it's an additional dwelling unit that is constructed on the site of the original dwelling unit. And so it can be part of the existing house, or it can be on the same land that the house is on. And so we think about them as granny flats, right? If you have a place and then there's a small unit downstairs and which traditionally grandma lived in, that's what we're talking about. But as our demographics evolve and our housing needs are made to fit not just large families, but singles as well. And so the example I generally give is like, it's my son and I, and like, we're not creating, like, we're not growing, but my son moved. And so he needs a dwelling unit, right? And so this is meant to, as much around seniors, but is around how do we give young people and up and coming citizens opportunities to live in Boston and take advantage of all the great things it has to offer.
And so this was an idea that had a lot of obstacles related to zoning and that sort of stuff that had to be cleared away. But Felix, how big a deal is this? You know, these little houses that you can, you know, how is this really something that will have an impact?
So there was recently an article I read in one of the national newspapers looking at that very question. And they looked at the greater San Francisco area specifically and the impact that it's had on single member households in the greater San Francisco area, and made it so that people are able to live close to where they work, live close to their friends, live close to their family, where otherwise they may have to live out tens or further miles away and have multiple barriers to get them to jobs, to get them to good quality food, get them to education, to their friends. And so these have been shown on a national level to really make a huge difference in people's lives and people's future successes.
So, Chrystal, go ahead.
I was also going to say the thing about the mayor's plan that I actually appreciated the most was the technical assistance that went along with this, because you're a homeowner. Perhaps you're like super busy, even if you're an elderly homeowner and you want to do this thing so, you know, you can live in the ADU and rent out the rest of your house. Like, it is a complicated process. And so having the technical assistance, I think, is going to make a world of difference and open up opportunity to people who would never, think that they could take advantage of this.
So Mayor Wu also talks about something that sounds complicated to most people, the Boston Planning and Development Agency. Chrystal, she talked last year about reforming it. She's changed it. Things are different now. What should people understand about the significance of this agency that, Mayor Wu would say, well, they used to just focus on building buildings. We need them to focus on building communities. What does this organizational change mean for getting to more affordable housing?
Yeah, this is huge, and not just about getting to more affordable housing, but just the way we think about how cities get built. This is an organization that was built to meet a particular need decades ago, and the city has changed very much, and it's appropriate for the agency to evolve over time. We just have to be patient, because it's hard to change a huge agency like that with lots of tentacles into everything. And it's hard to do that over time. And so one of the things I really appreciate, as I said in the beginning about the mayor and her plan, is to continue to, how's the phrase? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so she's just going to continue to bite at it until we eat the whole thing.
All right. Well, it is quite a large meal, no matter how you look at it. She's got very high construction costs to deal with. She's got all sorts of things that are going to fit into the housing picture. I wish we had more time with both of you, Chrystal and Felix. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, 2024 will be, at least in some ways, a very curious year. So says my colleague Edgar B. Herwick III, the guy behind GBH's Curiosity Desk, who joins us now with some of the oddities already piquing his interest. So 2024, what
Lots of stuff going on in 2024.
Okay.
I mean, we'll tick off a few just for starters.
Okay.
One being that it's a leap year, which is,
That's
you know,
right.
it only happens once every 4 years because
Right.
we're not quite 365 to get around. There's a little extra, so we got to adjust our calendar.
Okay.
To the 100th anniversary of the introduction of iodized salt. Yeah, so that's been 100 years.
More important than a lot of
defeating
people.
goiter 100
Yeah.
years ago in Michigan and then in the rest of the United States. And
Yep.
King Charles III, his face is going to be on the banknotes coming into circulation in the UK.
Oh, that is important.
So that's kind of, you know, these are all very sort of curious things, but there's two in particular that I have here that I think really are standout moments, and I thought we could play a little guessing game, see if you can guess these two items that are going to be happening in 2024 that I think make it extra curious, okay? So the first one here, this is, see if you can tell what I'm talking about here. So this is, there are about 2,000 species of this particular creature out there in the world. In the U.S., we organize our species into broods. Now,
broods. Okay, wait,
12 of these broods are associated with the number 17. 3 of these broods are associated with the number 13. What is this creature I am talking about?
All right, well, I'm going to horrify any, like, 6th grade teacher, 7th grade teacher out there, because I'm thinking broods. I know, like, gaggle of geese, pride of lions. Brood.
Think bugs.
Bugs in a brood.
Every 17 years. Bugs.
Locusts.
Cicadas, that would be it. Cicadas, which sometimes are called locusts. So why is 2024 an important year for cicadas? Well, there's something really interesting happening, which is, think about 17-year broods, 13-year broods. They're not on the same cycle, but every once in a while, every 221 years, the 13 years and the 17 years emerge in the same year. So that's going to happen in 2024 in the summertime. Now, what's interesting, if we check out this map here, right? The way these broods work is they don't hatch all over the country at the same time. So it's specific locations. And what makes this co-emergence special, besides the fact that it's only happening once every 221 years, is the fact that these two spots where these broods are emerging are adjacent to each other, which means in one very specific spot, if you're in, say, in and around Illinois, you will be able to see the 13-year cicadas and the 17-year cicadas all at the same time.
This is going to be a noisy year.
It's going to be a very, very noisy year, yeah. And also, what's interesting here is for scientists, this is a very unique experience because this is a co-emergence, and it's happening in a spot where you're going to have all of these species at the same time. It's a natural experiment, which doesn't happen that often. And so scientists like John Cooley, who's a professor at the University of Connecticut that I spoke with, he's like over the moon about this. He's like, we're going to be able to see, will they interbreed? What's going to happen? We don't really know. And as you can imagine, it's a little bit of a long-term experiment to sort of see how it all sort of plays out, but it's a big deal for scientists.
And that's a fun creature for a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people are fans.
And of course, here in Massachusetts, we will not see cicadas this year, but we do have a brood, a very small brood, which hatches every 17 years out on the Cape and the South Shore. Next year, 2025, will be that brood's emergence.
And broods are just for cicadas, or I should know this, broods are for insects in general?
I think in this case, it's just it's the way we classify cicadas, specifically periodical cicadas, because there, of course, are breeds of cicada that kind of come out every summer, but the periodical cicadas, we've decided to classify them into broods to be able to talk about these very specific populations.
Wow, when I woke up this morning, I did not expect...
You didn't think we were going to be talking about this, did you?
I was going to hear the phrase periodical cicadas.
Well, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. What else you got?
All right, so our second big one is, here are your clues. See if we can get this one, right? Okay, so basically, on any given spot on Earth, the chances that this is going to happen, on average, is about once every 400 years, okay? But here in North America, 2024, this year, will remarkably be the second time in less than 10 years that this occurs and can be observed. The first known recorded occurrence of this phenomenon was around 1300 BCE in present-day Syria. Any idea what we're talking about?
Well,
curious event in 2024.
Well, the last reference you made, 1300 BC, could be mathematical, could be astronomical. Those are things that are rather ancient. What we have ancient records for. And I am going to say it's an astronomical event. I don't think you're going to tell me about some math wizard moment. And it's meteor shower, not big enough, but eclipse.
There it is. A full solar eclipse, which will be visible from North America. So we had one of these in 2017. And amazingly, it's just really, really unique, the fact that we have another one happening in 2024. Now, the way this sort of works, to be in a spot where you can see the actual full solar eclipse, you've got to be on a very specific path. So the path of this particular eclipse is going to go from southwest Mexico up through the United States and out into eastern Canada. So the interesting thing here is there's a bunch of big cities which are on the path of totality, like Dallas, Indianapolis. If you can get to Rochester, if you can get to northern Vermont or northern New Hampshire, you will see the full eclipse, which is to say you'll see the entire sun covered.
Which is pretty cool. But most of us in Massachusetts, are we outside that belt?
We are. I don't know if you remember 2017 when we had that full solar eclipse as well. And it was pretty spectacular here in Massachusetts. I was here in Massachusetts when it happened. And what we got from our angle then was about 62, 63% totality. So about 63% of the sun was covered. This time, even for us here, we're even closer to the line of totality, which means we're going to see something like 92, 93% of the sun get covered. Which is pretty good.
Right,
so this is April 8th. It's happening this year. You know, I spoke with Gary Saronic, who's a consulting editor at Sky and Telescope magazine, which is based right here in Cambridge. And he said to me, he was like, listen, if you have the means, if you have the ability, get into the path of totality. He's like, it's cool that it's going to be like 92, 93 here, but he said there is few things on Earth that are as indescribable and interesting as experiencing a full solar eclipse. I mean, he was like stumbling over his words with excitement.
It does sound pretty
And it's
cool.
pretty close, you know, like Western New York, Northern New Hampshire. If you can get there, April 8th, that's when it's happening.
We'll
pray for sunny skies. I mean, the danger is that it would be a cloudy day and you'll miss it. But, you know, pretty spectacular stuff.
All right. Well, getting into the path of totality, all that great wisdom, Edgar B. Herwick III, thank you so much. And it's going to be it is the year of the dragon. We got that going.
Yeah, so let's get that going, too. It's going to be a curious year, one way or another, I promise.
It will be. And we hope to check back with you again. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely.
That's it for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm Liz Neisloss. Thanks for watching. Good night.